Hello, my fellow storytellers. In this tutorial, I'm going to be telling you how to create a metal plating texture that looks suits very well within a sci-fi atmosphere. It could be used for like a hull of a ship, or it can be used for a metal plating flooring. So what we're going to do is that we're going to press delete to delete our default cube, and then we're going to add in a plane. And just like before, we're going to go to our shading tab and then click new. First off, we're going to create the base color mask so that we can then create the masks for all of our reflection maps and our normal maps. So what we're going to do is that we're going to do Shift A to grab our Veroni texture to search for it. Search for Veroni texture. Oh, and something I have to add. I forgot to explain this in my last tutorial, but to enable the Node Wrangler add-on, you go to Edit, Preferences, Add-ons, and look for Node Wrangler in the search bar. And then you click the little check mark to activate it. So what we're going to do is that we're going to do Control T on our Veroni texture so we can get our texture coordinate and our mapping coordinate. And then we do Shift A, search for color ramp, change our color ramp to constant, and have change our color ramp to constant, and have the color output of our Veroni texture go into the factor input of our color ramp. Next, we're going to get a mix RGB node. Then we're going to output the color of our color ramp into the factor of the mix RGB node. Then we're going to output the color of the mix RGB node to the base color of the principled BSDF. Then we're going to make one of the colors black on the mix RGB node so that we can tell the difference between the mask. So what we have to do is that we have to fiddle with our color ramp so that we can start to see what our texture is going to look like. Now, there's a problem here. As you can see, the Veroni texture looks more like shattered glass. And the way to fix that is that you go from Excludian to Manhattan. Now it looks a little bit more like metal plating. So now you could just fiddle with this, the first part, so that you can get it to what you want it to look like. I'm going to adjust the randomness so it's a little less random. Then I'm going to flip that around like that. And that's what I want. So we're going to duplicate our Veroni texture. Well, actually, we're going to duplicate this entire row. So then we have a second Veroni texture, a second of all this. Then we're going to put the output of our mix RGB node to the input of our first mix RGB node of color 2. So now you see that nothing changed, and that's because our masks are stacking on top of each other. So what we're going to do to fix this is that we are going to, on the mapping node, we're going to type in for the rotation of the z-axis 90 degrees. And as you can see, it flips at 90 degrees, and now we have them overlapping each other, but they are opposite. So now we're going to adjust this so that we can see the difference between our masks. Oops, sorry about that. It didn't mean to flip to that other side of the screen. So we're going to adjust it accordingly to what we want. I'm going to leave it about there. Then what we do next is that we do Shift A, look for another color ramp, and this is going to be for our bump map. Shift A, bump, move our principal BSDF out a little bit, move our bump map over here, put our output of the normal into the normal of the principal BSDF. Next, we are going to have the first output of the first, we're going to have the color output of the first Veroni texture inputted into our new color ramp. Then we're going to do Shift A again and look for a mix RGB node. Then you do the same and plug the color ramp into the factor. Now, just to demonstrate here so that we can quickly organize to see how our bump map begins to look, we are going to make that dark and then adjust your color ramp accordingly. As you can see, it's trying to line up with what we have drawn. Now we need to add the second color ramp. So Shift D to duplicate what we have here, and then get a new Mix RGB node, plug this into the FAC of this Mix RGB node, make this dark, and next we're going to plug this in to the color 2 and then plug in the second color ramp into that, and then the second Veroni texture into the second color ramp. So now our texture is starting to come to life. It's starting to look like a metal texture. What we're going to do is that we're going to adjust this so it looks right about where we want it. Adjust this accordingly as well. Adjust that. Oh, by the way, you are not setting these color ramps to constant. If you set them to constant, the bump map will not look right. So so essentially you just adjust it to whatever you want it to be. I'm going to leave it like that. Next, we're going to work on our reflection maps. Be sure your engine is set to Eevee, not Eevee. Whoops. Be sure your engine is not set on Eevee and is instead set to cycles. If you have a GPU, set the device to GPU compute, and if you want denoising, be sure to enable that. So what we're going to do is that we're going to move our light, which is right here, to our flooring. Let me zoom out a little bit so I can move it to our flooring. That organized there. And we're going to click on our flooring again, and we're going to create the reflection and metallic maps. So what we have to do is that we need to organize our nodes again. Let's move our bump map. Let's move our bump map nodes over here, and move the bump node right here. And now what we're going to do for our metallic and roughness maps is that we're going to duplicate the Mix RGB nodes and the color ramp nodes for the bump map, and then we're going to put, just like before, the color output of the first Veroni texture into the first color ramp, and then the color output of the second Veroni texture into the second color ramp. Next, we're going to first output this to our roughness. And then we adjust it accordingly. White, we always have to remember, white is less reflective, and black is more reflective. So we put that together. That. And our texture is starting to come to life. Then next, we're going to output this to our metallic. So let me move this up here. we're going to output this to our metallic of input of our principal BSDF, and that is important because now you can see there's starting to be little reflections right here. It's starting to look a little bit more like metal. And whoops, sorry, didn't mean to bounce it all over the place like that again. Next, we're going to add our color. We're going to make the color of our metal. I'm going to have this metal be a little bit like a greenish gray, but you have the choice on what your metal is going to look like, and what your metal flooring is going to look like. Then have that go up like that, and then move this around like that. Have that be like that. And then to add a little bit of detail, because right now our metal texture looks a little bit plasticky, we are going to add a, let me move the view thing real quick. We're going to add a noise texture, Shift A, noise, Control T for Node Wrangler, duplicate the color ramp, output the color of the noise texture into the factor of the color ramp, and what you're going to do is that, let me drag this mix RGB node down right here. We're going to create a new mix RGB node for our noise texture. Output the color ramp of the noise texture to the factor of the new mix RGB node. Then output that node to the color 1 of the roughness and metallic map. Input that into the color 1 of that mix RGB node. Then you organize. Well, first off, you need to make one of these darker so that you could see how your map is going to be changed by that. And then another thing is that you could also add it to your bump map, so you could have the detail of it being there. And then there we go. Oops, sorry about that. You have to also put it into your bump map as well. So you put the noise, you put the noise output to both the bump map, the last bump map or the main bump map mix RGB, and the roughness and metallic mix RGB nodes. So what we now do is that we need to adjust our noise texture accordingly. I'm going to have a lot of detail and roughness in mine. Now change this a little bit like that. And then add some more stuff like that, and a little bit more detail, a little bit more roughness. Sorry about that. I don't know why my computer keeps on doing that. And then you could adjust it accordingly. Once you have your entire texture set up, you could adjust it to the way you want it to look. I'm going to change my colors a little bit so that looks a little bit more like metal. Get rid of that green. And then do that. Stand around. And then let's just set that to, did not mean to do that. Set that to that. and adjust your reflectiveness accordingly. Then there we go. There's our fully created metal plating texture. And this will end this Blender tutorial today. I am the Arcane Storyteller, and see you next time in the next tutorial.